I've always lived in Nevada. Born and raised. Out here, there isn't much going on unless you make something happen yourself. I'm a senior in high school now, and for the past couple years, my friends and I found our own kind of fun. Urban exploration. Abandoned buildings, dead malls, utility tunnels, train yards, any forgotten corner of civilization we could crawl into. We were there, flashlights in hand, masks on, sneakers ready. It wasn't about vandalism or tagging or stealing. It was about the atmosphere. The silence. The stillness. The strange thrill of walking into a place everyone else had already given up on. Out of all of us, Charles was the one who took it the most seriously. He wasn't a loud guy, actually, kind of the opposite. Quiet, thoughtful, maybe a little obsessive. But when it came to finding these hidden places, he was a bloodhound. Where the rest of us scrolled Reddit or TikTok for leads, Charles had some kind of underground network. Burner Instagrams, shady Discord servers, I don't even know. Half the time, I didn't ask where his tips came from. I figured the less I knew, the better. One Friday afternoon, I got a message from Charles with no context. Just a screenshot of some blurry photo posted on a weird Instagram page with like 20 followers. The picture was almost nothing, just some grainy desert landscape with what looked like the remnants of a wooden structure half sunk into a slope. The caption read, "Dozens of abandoned mine shafts in the Mojave. If you know where to look." Below the caption were a few cryptic comments. "He's still down there. Bring masks. Only go if you don't plan to come back." Creepy stuff. Par for the course. Charles followed up with a pin drop on a map. No address, no real location. Just coordinates in the middle of nowhere, halfway between nowhere and never. I asked him if it was real. He responded with one word. Saturday? That was all it took. Saturday morning, bright and early, it was me, Charles, and our friend James. James was the skeptical one. Always had something sarcastic to say, always questioning everything, but deep down, I think he loved the adrenaline just as much as the rest of us. I had a Jeep Wrangler that I used for camping trips and off-roading. It was dusty and a little beat up, but perfect for desert drives. I loaded up a cooler, water bottles, flashlights, extra batteries, first aid kit. We all packed masks in case of mold or dust in the shaft, and Charles brought his usual overstuffed backpack, which probably had everything short of a Geiger counter in it. We drove for hours. At first, it was paved road and blue sky, some old gas stations and beat-up diners. Then we turned off onto a gravel road. Then dirt. Then not even a road, just tire tracks through brush and sand. Cell service dropped somewhere along the way. Charles was in the passenger seat, holding the offline map he'd saved. James was in the back, getting more and more vocal about how we were probably getting scanned by a teenager with Photoshop. The deeper we got, the weirder it felt. The land around us flattened out, stretched wide like some prehistoric ocean bed. No buildings. No fences. No signs of life. Not even birds. Just sun-bleached earth, the wind, and the sound of our tires crunching dirt. We'd been driving for maybe 30 minutes past the last recognizable thing when Charles suddenly said, "There." At first I didn't see it. James leaned forward between the front seats, squinting. I slowed down and looked in the direction Charles was pointing. At first it looked like more rocks, a shift in the slope. But as we approached, the shape came into view. A collapsed wooden structure, partially embedded in the side of a dune-like hill. The wood was gray and brittle looking, maybe scorched from sun or time. A few support beams still stood at weird angles, leaning like they'd been twisted and dropped by a giant hand. And behind the beams was a hole. A black void, maybe 5 feet across, irregular in shape and completely engulfed in shadow. It didn't look like much, but it was definitely man-made. And it looked old. Charles pulled out his phone and dropped a new pin. "Told you," he said flatly. James crossed his arms. "You got lucky." I said nothing. My stomach had started doing that slow roll thing, like when you're about to give a presentation or get called to the principal's office. I told myself it was just the heat. I pulled the Jeep off to the side, onto a relatively flat patch of dirt maybe 20 yards from the entrance. We climbed out and stretched. It was early afternoon now, sun directly overhead, not a cloud in sight. We popped the trunk and got our gear, headlamps, gloves, masks. Charles handed out walkie-talkies, because of course he brought walkie-talkies. Standing in front of the mine entrance was a whole different thing. Up close, it looked less like an archaeological curiosity and more like a trap. The beams were cracked, held together by rusty nails and what looked like cobwebs. The air coming from inside was cold, like a breeze from a freezer door, and it smelled faintly metallic. Charles picked up a rock and tossed it inside. We listened. 1 second. 2. Then clang. Then clang. Then clang. Then silence. I looked at Charles. He was already strapping on his headlamp. James sighed, but he followed suit. I adjusted my mask and gave the others a thumbs up. Let's make it quick, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. The shaft sloped down, thank God. Not a vertical drop. It was steep, but walkable if we leaned forward and kept our footing. The first 10 feet were lined with wood and dirt. After that, it gave way to stone, dark, sedimentary layers with the occasional glint of something like mica or quartz. It was cooler the deeper we went. Not refreshingly cool, eerily so. The kind of cold that wraps around your legs and makes you question how far you've gone. Our footsteps echoed weirdly, like the sound had nowhere to go. The deeper we descended, the darker it got. Even with 3 headlamps shining, shadows clung to the corners like they were alive. We reached a fork in the tunnel. One path veered left, curving slightly downward, and the other went straight for maybe 20 feet before vanishing into black. There was no discussion. Charles picked the straight path. We followed. As we walked, I noticed something about the walls. Scratches. Not deep, but deliberate. Lines in the dirt and stone, like something had scraped against it. Not just once, repeatedly. Some were at waist height. Others at ankle or shoulder level. None of us said anything. I think we all saw them. No one wanted to break the silence. The deeper we went, the more unnatural it felt. Not dangerous, exactly, just wrong. Like we were trespassing somewhere sacred, or cursed, or both. James muttered. This place smells like an attic full of dead batteries. I nodded. The metallic scent was getting stronger. So was the dust. I was grateful for the mask now. We passed an old mica rail, mostly buried under layers of dirt and rock. Bits of broken wood, rusted metal, bolts the size of a child's fist. A few ancient-looking crates that had collapsed in on themselves. No signs of animals. No signs of anything alive. Still, Charles pressed on. We walked maybe 50 more feet when the air changed again. Not colder, heavier. The kind of pressure you feel before a thunderstorm. I adjusted my headlamp and looked down. The ground had gouges in it. Like someone, or something, had dragged something heavy across it. The grooves were spaced like sled rails, but deeper, rougher. The kind of marks you don't get from tools. I stopped. So did Charles. So did James. We heard something. At first, it was faint. Barely there. A shuffle, a scrape. Like metal across rock. Then again. Then again. It was coming from farther down the tunnel. Not fast. Not rhythmic. Just there. We looked at each other. No one said a word. James raised a finger to his lips, then reached up and clicked off his headlamp. Charles and I followed. We stood in total darkness, our breathing muffled by our masks, our ears straining. The sound came again. Drag. Pause. Drag. Pause. Closer. I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry. Then silence. Like whatever was coming had stopped to listen to. And that was when I knew. We went alone down here. For a few moments, none of us moved. The tunnel was so dark it felt like standing inside a closed casket. No shapes, no outlines, just the overwhelming pressure of darkness, and that strange, cold air wrapping around us like wet cloth. We stood frozen, heads turned in the direction the sound had come from. Whatever it was hadn't moved again. The scraping had stopped as suddenly as it started. And now, the silence pressed in on us even harder than before. I could feel my heartbeat in my neck. James shifted slightly, and the gravel beneath his boots crunched. The sound echoed far louder than it should have. "Dude," I whispered. "What is that?" James didn't answer. He just shook his head slowly. Charles, as always, was the first to do something. He turned his flashlight back on and slowly raised it, sweeping the beam down the tunnel ahead. The light cut through the dark like a knife through smoke, illuminating maybe 20 feet ahead of us. Then, nothing. The tunnel just swallowed it. But there was no movement. No eyes reflecting. No shadow retreating into deeper blackness. Just rock, dust, and silence. I think it's a collapsed track, Charles said softly, like he was trying to convince himself more than us. Maybe something rusted and fell. Echo just made it sound closer. James clicked his light back on too, but I noticed his hand was shaking. We stood there for another few seconds before Charles started walking again. Wait, seriously? James hissed. After that? You want to keep going? Charles didn't look back. We're already down here. Might as well see what it is. I exchanged a look with James, and then sighed, stepping after Charles. James cursed under his breath but followed. The tunnel continued to slope slightly downward, and the ground felt more uneven now, like we were walking on chunks of broken stone instead of a smooth path. At one point, I stumbled and caught myself on the wall. My glove brushed against something rough, wood maybe, and I jerked my hand back when it crumbled under my touch. We walked another 40 or 50 feet before the tunnel opened up into a wider space. Not a room exactly, just a chamber where the ceiling arched higher, and the walls pulled back to reveal a junction of 3 additional tunnels. The floor was scattered with debris, shards of timber, rusted metal parts, and what looked like an old lantern long since shattered. A twisted wheel lay in the corner, half buried in dust. And then, we saw it. On the ground, leading toward the leftmost tunnel, were the same dragging marks we'd seen earlier. Only now they were deeper, clearer, more deliberate. It looked like something heavy had been pulled that way recently. Charles crouched beside them and ran his fingers over the grooves. He looked up at us. These are fresh. James just stared at him. You're seriously analyzing this like it's some kind of archaeological dig? No, Charles said. I'm trying to figure out how long ago someone was down here. Or something, I muttered. Nobody laughed. The air felt different here, more stale, more oppressive. My ears popped like we'd gone lower in elevation. There was a faint hum in the back of my skull, like an old CRT TV left on in a room just out of reach. We stayed in the chamber for a minute or two. Nobody really wanted to go any farther. Not after what we'd heard. Then, in the distance, faint but distinct, the scraping sound returned. Except this time, it wasn't coming from one tunnel. It came from 2. Both the left and the center tunnel echoed with that unmistakable noise. Metal or bone or something being pulled along stone. The sounds were staggered, uneven, like 2 things moving at slightly different paces. I took a step back instinctively. Okay. Nope. I'm done. Charles stood up, shining his light toward the left tunnel. Then to the center. Then back at us. I think we should head back, he said finally. James didn't argue. Neither did I. We turned and started retracing our steps, moving faster than we had coming in. No one said anything. We just walked, headlamps bouncing, boots crunching gravel, dust curling in the beams of our lights. We made it maybe 30 feet when James suddenly stopped. Wait, he said. Was that here before? He pointed at the wall. There, in the stone, was a mark. At first, I thought it was just more of the scratches we'd seen earlier. But this one was different. It was a symbol. Not carved deeply, just etched into the grime. A circle with lines running through it vertically and horizontally, intersecting at strange angles. Almost like a compass rose, but off. Crooked. Wrong. And there were more of them, trailing down the wall at irregular intervals. Like breadcrumbs. Charles stepped closer to one and traced it with his gloved finger. That's not natural, he murmured. No sh*t, James said. This is how horror movies start, man. Suddenly, we heard a new sound, fast, sharp, not dragging this time but clicking. Like something tapping against the stone floor. It was faint, but it was following us. We didn't wait. We started running. Not full speed sprinting, but fast enough that the dust kicked up behind us, fast enough that our lights bobbed wildly. I could hear Charles ahead of me, James just behind. The tunnel felt longer than before, like it had stretched while we were inside. Every step felt like wading through syrup. My lungs started to burn, but I didn't stop. That tapping didn't stop either. Click, click, click. Then, without warning, darkness. My headlamp flickered once and died. I skidded to a stop and slammed into the tunnel wall. sh*t. My light's out. James cursed behind me. Don't stop. Just go. I can't see. Suddenly, Charles's light cut through the dark. He was maybe 20 feet ahead, waving his beam back at me. "Come on," he yelled. I bolted toward the light. James caught up beside me, panting. I felt the air shift behind me. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like something was close. Like the pressure of a presence right on your back. Cold and watching. We burst into a straighter part of the tunnel, and I could see the faint glow of the entrance. Blessed daylight, maybe 100 feet ahead. We didn't speak. We just ran. As we got closer to the incline that led up toward the opening, the ground changed again, looser, more gravel than stone. My boot slipped once, and I nearly ate it, but James grabbed my arm and kept me upright. Charles reached the incline first and started climbing. Then I heard it. Behind us. The scream. Not human. Not animal. Something in between. It echoed up the tunnel, a guttural, warp sound like metal tearing mixed with a voice in agony. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I dropped my backpack. Anything to go faster. I scrambled up the incline, my hands sinking into the loose dirt and splinters of broken timber. My legs were burning. My lungs were fire. But the scream kept chasing us, bouncing off the walls like it was everywhere at once. James was behind me, cursing between breaths. "Move, move, move." Charles reached the top and spun around, pulling both of us up by our arms. I collapsed outside the tunnel entrance, gasping, my face caked in sweat and dust. Daylight never looked so good. But we didn't stop there. James grabbed my arm and yanked me to my feet. Car. Now. We stumbled across the dirt patch back toward the Wrangler. I looked over my shoulder once, and wished I hadn't. There, at the mouth of the mine, something moved. Not fully visible. Just motion. Like a figure stepping half into the light, but staying just out of clarity. Like it wanted to be seen, but not understood. Then it was gone. We piled into the Jeep. Charles got in the back. James took passenger. I turned the key and floored it. The tires kicked up a wave of dust as we tore away from the site. No one said a word for the first few minutes. We didn't even ask each other what we saw. We didn't want to know. The silence in the car was deafening. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. My legs shook the entire drive back to the main road. Only when we were back on pavement did James finally speak. What the F***K was that? Nobody answered. The road stretched out ahead of us like a lifeline, dusty and cracked, but steady and real. For a long time, the only sound inside the Jeep was the hum of the tires and the uneven breathing of three guys trying to convince themselves they hadn't just escaped death. I kept both hands on the wheel, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the empty road ahead. Every bump made me twitch. Every shadow on the desert floor looked like something crawling after us. No one had asked what we saw, if we even saw the same thing. It didn't matter. Whatever had been down in that mine wasn't right. Wasn't natural. Wasn't supposed to be. My right foot was throbbing. I hadn't noticed it during the run. Adrenaline is a hell of a thing. But now that we were safe, pain came flooding in like water through a cracked dam. I gritted my teeth and kept driving. Charles finally broke the silence. "You good?" he asked from the back seat. I shook my head. I think I messed up my foot. Bad. I might have stepped on something or twisted it climbing. "Let me see," James said, twisting around to look. I pulled over onto the shoulder of the road, cut the engine, and opened the door. The second I tried to swing my foot out, a jolt of pain shot up my leg. I hissed and leaned back, bracing myself against the seat. James hopped out and came around. "Damn," he muttered. "Your sock's soaked." He peeled off my shoe, or what was left of it. The heel had been ripped open, the sole shredded. My foot underneath was scraped raw, swollen, and covered in dried blood and desert grime. A couple wooden splinters stuck out from the side of my heel, and the ball of my foot looked purple. "We need to get you to a hospital," James said. Charles leaned forward between the seats. "You need stitches. Maybe a tetanus shot too." I nodded through clenched teeth. "I can't drive like this. One of you has to take the wheel." James didn't hesitate. He slid into the driver's seat, adjusted it quickly, and started the engine. Charles helped me climb into the back, propping my foot on his backpack. It wasn't comfortable, but at least I was off it. We drove in silence again, this time toward civilization. The nearest hospital was about an hour and a half away. Every pothole was a gut punch. I stared out the window at the vast, empty desert. Nothing moved out there. No cars. No animals. Just land and sky and the leftover weight of whatever we'd run from. By the time we reached the hospital parking lot, I was sweating and lightheaded. The nurse at the front desk took one look at my foot and called for a wheelchair. They asked the usual questions. I lied. Told them I'd heard it hiking. I didn't need to be explaining mine shafts and nightmares to anyone wearing scrubs. They cleaned the wounds, removed the splinters, and gave me a tetanus booster. The doc said I was lucky, no broken bones, just deep lacerations and a mild sprain. They bandaged it up and told me to stay off it for a few days. We stayed in the waiting room while I got stitched. When I came out with crutches and gauze, Charles and James stood up immediately. James looked like he'd just come from a funeral. Charles had that same unreadable look he always wore, but something behind his eyes had shifted. Like a curtain had been pulled back. We didn't talk about what happened. Not then. Not in the car. Not even the next day. We all went home, and for 3 days I barely moved from the couch. But nightmares? Those didn't care about elevation or antibiotics. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw darkness. Not just lack of light, but presence. A moving, living dark. The kind that watches you. I heard the scraping, the clicking, and that scream, low and drawn out, buried in my bones like a splinter I couldn't pull out. By the 4th day, I was hobbling around my room, footsore but manageable. The stitches were holding, and I wasn't limping too badly. I figured I was finally on the mend. That's when James texted. "Hey, I think I left my wallet near the mine when I was helping you." I stared at the message, not responding right away. My stomach sank. Then another message came. "I'm not going back in. I just want to check the outside. You and Charles down?" It took me a full 5 minutes to even consider replying. "You serious?" I finally typed. "Yeah. Just the entrance. Promise." Against every logical fiber in my being, I said yes. It wasn't just about the wallet. I had to know. Had to see if the mine was still there. If the thing we saw, or thought we saw, was just a panic-induced hallucination. A stress response. Some weird gas leak. Anything but what it felt like. Saturday morning, the 3 of us met at my place. I brought extra water, painkillers, and a big flashlight, the industrial kind you can knock someone out with. James brought gloves and a walking stick for me. Charles brought nothing, just himself. "You sure we should do this?" I asked as we climbed back into the Jeep. "No," James said, "but I have to." The drive felt different this time. Less thrill, more dread. I recognized every curve, every rocky turnoff. It was like driving back to the scene of a crime you weren't sure you survived. We reached the same dirt patch and parked in the exact same spot. The sun was higher this time. No clouds. The desert stretched in every direction like a giant, empty canvas. But the mine? Still there. Still waiting. We approached slowly. My foot throbbed, but I didn't stop. As we got closer, I felt the air shift again, cooler, like a hidden breath exhaling from the dark. And then I saw it. My shoe. The one I'd lost when we ran. It was sitting about 5 feet from the entrance. Right side up. Not buried. Not torn apart by weather. Just placed there. I stopped in my tracks. "Is that your?" James began. "Yeah," I said. "That's mine." I limped forward, bent down, and picked it up. The second I touched it, I knew something was wrong. The fabric was ripped, not like it had just fallen apart, but torn, like something had bitten it. There were teeth marks. Big ones. Ragged chunks missing. The heel had been shredded, and there was something sticky, dried, dark, and not blood. I turned the shoe over in my hand. The toe was crushed in like it had been clamped. "What the hell?" James muttered. Charles knelt beside me, his face grim. "Those are bite marks." "From what?" I asked. He didn't answer. None of us looked into the shaft. We didn't need to. Just standing near it was enough. The feeling came back, thick and suffocating, like something pressing down on your chest and whispering in your ear at the same time. James glanced around the ground near the entrance. "No wallet," he said softly. "Figures." We stood in silence for a minute. Then Charles said something that chilled me to the core. "This mine isn't on any maps." I looked at him. "What?" "I've checked. Geological databases. Historical surveys. Even old mining reports from the Mojave. This entrance doesn't exist." "You sure?" "Positive." "So," James said, "what does that mean?" "It means either it's so old and undocumented that it slips through every system, or it's not supposed to be found." My mouth went dry. We left not long after. No one wanted to hang around. I didn't even bother taking the shoe with me. I dropped it back on the ground like it might still be dangerous to hold. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The mine entrance was still there. But for a split second, just half a second, I thought I saw something step forward. Not fully. Not into the light. Just close enough. After that second visit, everything changed. The silence between us wasn't just awkward anymore. It was heavy. The kind of silence that followed you home. That sat in the corner of your room while you tried to sleep. That crept into the spaces between your thoughts like smoke. Charles stopped responding to texts. James ghosted our group chat. And me? I kept replaying that second trip in my head, over and over. That shoe. Those bite marks. The way the mind seemed to breathe when you got close to it, exhaling cold like it remembered you. And that final glance in the mirror, when I thought I saw something shift forward into the light. Just for a second. Just enough to know it wanted me to see it. I should have let it go. I tried to let it go. But something inside me kept scratching, just beneath the surface. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't focus. My foot was healing fine. The stitches had come out. The swelling was down. But the dreams were getting worse. They were nightmares exactly. More like echoes. I'd see tunnels in my dreams. Endless tunnels. Narrow, jagged, dusty. I'd be walking, sometimes crawling, trying to find a way out, and then I'd hear it, that dragging sound. And the scream. Always the scream. But the worst part wasn't the sound. It was that I started waking up with dust on my hands. Not metaphorical dust. Real, gritty, sand-like grime. The kind that clung to my fingers like I'd actually been digging in something. I'd check my sheets. Clean. I'd check under my fingernails. Filthy. I stopped telling people about it after the second time. That's when I started doing my own research. If Charles was out, and James was done, then I had to understand this thing myself. I pulled up geological records for the Mojave. What Charles had mentioned about the shaft not appearing on any maps. He wasn't wrong. The mine wasn't listed anywhere, not even in the oldest survey data I could find. I spent hours cross-referencing historical mining claims, ghost towns, everything. Nothing. Then I tried a different angle. Urban legends. Supernatural reports. Old Reddit threads, conspiracy forums, digital archives, even obscure library microfilm that someone had helpfully uploaded and forgotten. I didn't find our exact mine, but I found others. Scattered stories across the Southwest. Mine shafts with no origin, no paperwork, no towns nearby. Just holes in the desert. Some of them connected to disappearances. Some tied to odd lights or strange sounds. Some so old and remote, they were only mentioned once and then never again. The one pattern I noticed. No one ever went in more than once. I guess that made us the exception. A week passed. Then two. And then James called. It was around 11 p.m. And I almost didn't pick up. But something told me to answer. His voice was shaky. "Dude, I think someone was at my house." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" I got home, and my front door was cracked open. Not kicked in. Just unlocked. "Did you call the cops?" "Yeah. They came, checked it out. Said nothing was taken. No sign of forced entry. No fingerprints." "You think it's connected?" I didn't. Not until I went into my room. My wallet, it was on my bed. I blinked. "The one you lost at the mine?" "Yeah. Same one. ID cards, everything. I left it near the entrance when I helped you get to the car." "I know that." I didn't say anything. "And the worst part," he continued, "there was dirt. Desert dust. All over the floor. Just like faint footprints. Leading out the back." I gripped the phone tighter. "I haven't told Charles," he said. I don't think I want to. I didn't blame him. We didn't talk long after that. Just a few awkward goodbyes and a mutual understanding that something had followed us back. The next day, I checked my apartment. I hadn't noticed anything out of place before, but now I really looked. And yeah, the sliding window on my fire escape. Unlocked. The kitchen floor. A smear of something brownish red near the baseboard. Too faded to test, too dry to prove anything. And in the hallway outside my bedroom, a symbol. Faint. Almost invisible unless you were looking for it. Drawn was something greasy and dark, just above the baseboard. A circle with intersecting lines. The same one we saw carved into the tunnel wall. I scrubbed it off with bleach, but it left a stain in the paint. After that, I kept the lights on. 2 days later, I got a knock on my door. It was Charles. He looked off. Pale. His hoodie was zipped up even though it was 80 degrees out. His eyes were red-rimmed like he hadn't slept in days. "I need to talk to you," he said. I let him in. We sat on the couch. I offered him water. He didn't touch it. "I've been dreaming about it," he said. "The mine. The tunnels. You have too, right?" I nodded. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "It's not just dreams. I wake up, and there's dirt under my nails. I keep finding pebbles in my bed. I even found a splinter in my palm yesterday." He held up his hand. A thin pink scar ran along his lifeline. "I think we were marked," he whispered. "Marked? Like chosen? Or cursed? Whatever that thing is, it doesn't want us to forget. It brought your shoe back. It brought James' wallet. It wants us to know it can find us." My throat tightened. "Do you remember the account that posted the original mine picture?" he asked. "Yeah. What about it?" I tried messaging it again. Just to ask something. Anything. But it's gone. The whole account's deleted. Wiped off the internet. And when I reverse searched the photo, no matches. Not even on cached pages. "So what do we do?" I asked. He looked up at me. His eyes were bloodshot, wide, afraid. "I think we have to go back." "No," I said instantly. "That's insane. If we don't," he said slowly, "it won't stop. It'll keep bleeding into our lives. A little more each day. Until we're not just dreaming about the tunnels. We're in them. Forever." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream at him. But part of me already knew he was right. The dreams weren't dreams anymore. They were previews. That night I got another sign. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of scraping. Not in my dream. In my hallway. Real, slow, metallic dragging. Across the wood floor. I sat up in bed, heart in my throat. It stopped. I grabbed my flashlight from the nightstand, clicked it on, and stepped into the hallway. Nothing. No movement. No shapes. No doors ajar. But on the wall, another symbol. Drawn this time in what looked like ash. The circle. The lines. Twisted. Crooked. Below it, scratched into the drywall. "Come home." We left at dawn. No texts. No social media posts. No explanations. Just me, Charles, and James, back in the Jeep again like nothing had happened. But this time, no one said a word. We weren't explorers anymore. Not thrill seekers. Not friends chasing adrenaline. We were something else now. Bound. Claimed. Charles sat in the back with a duffel bag full of gear. He packed rope, backup batteries, infrared lights, and a handheld camcorder that recorded to a mini SD card. James brought a hunting knife he didn't know how to use. I brought a crowbar. I don't know why, I just needed something that felt solid in my hands. The desert didn't look the same this time. It was quieter than I remembered. Not peaceful, dead, like the land itself had turned its face away. The wind didn't move. The heat sat heavy in the air, unmoving. Even the sky looked dull. The mine was still there, of course. It always would be. We parked a little farther away this time. None of us wanted to get too close too fast. I could already feel it. The weight in my chest, the pressure in my ears, the faint high-pitched ringing like something humming beneath the surface of the earth. We stood in front of the entrance for a long time. James finally broke the silence. "So what's the plan?" Charles answered without turning his head. We go in. We document what we can. We reach the source. And we end it. End it? I asked. Charles finally turned, looking me dead in the eye. If we can find what's behind this, whatever it is, maybe we can cut the connection. Destroy it. Break the link. And if we can't? Charles didn't answer. We switched on our headlamps and stepped inside. The descent was faster this time. We knew the angles, the turns, the slippery parts. The mine welcomed us back like it had been expecting us. No collapsing beams. No shifting rocks. The path was clear, eerily so. It wasn't long before we reached the chamber again. The 3 branching tunnels looked the same, but somehow older. Like they'd been waiting longer than we'd been alive. Charles pointed to the center tunnel. That's where it's coming from. The dreams. The noise. The thing. That's the way. James swallowed hard. You sure? No, Charles said. But we have to pick one. We moved forward slowly. The air changed almost immediately. Heavier, denser, humid in a way that made no sense. Our boots crunched through dirt that clung to us like wet clay. Our lights flickered occasionally, but we didn't stop. 50 feet in, we hit the first markings. Symbols etched into the walls, more of the twisted circles with intersecting lines. Some had new branches, like arms reaching out. Others pulsed faintly under the beam of our flashlights, as if the stone itself remembered pain. Charles pulled out his camcorder and began recording, narrating quietly. Symbols increasing in frequency. Possibly ritualistic. No known cultural matches. Date of origin unknown. James muttered under his breath. This isn't some History Channel special, man. We're in it now. We kept walking. At around the 100-foot mark, the walls changed. No longer raw rock. Now smooth. Carved. Like someone, or something, had shaped the tunnel deliberately. The floor had rail grooves, but no cuts. Just the echoes of old wheels. And then came the sound. Soft at first. A scrape. A whisper. Then louder. Click. Click. Drag. We stopped in our tracks. The lights dimmed for a split second, and the temperature dropped. My breath misted in front of me. It's here, Charles whispered. It knows we're here. Keep moving, I said. We finished this. We walked forward, breath shallow, knees tight, fingers clenched. My crowbar felt heavier in my hand. The tunnel opened into a large cavern. Our lights scanned the space, 20, maybe 30 feet wide. A ceiling so high it vanished into darkness. The center of the room was dominated by a pit, circular, smooth-edged, maybe 8 feet across. Surrounding it were bones. Animal maybe. Human probably. Arranged in spirals. James gagged and turned away. Charles kept filming. There's something in there, I said. We approached the edge of the pit carefully, our lights angled downward. And that's when we saw it. It wasn't a creature. Not exactly. It was a shape, shifting, pulsing, like a shadow folding in on itself. Not solid. Not fluid. Just wrong. Our lights barely illuminated it. The space around it warped, edges bending, sound distorting. Then it moved. Not upward. Not toward us. It just unfolded, like it had never been in 3 dimensions to begin with. A tendril of shadow reached toward the edge, brushing bone, curling around the rock like smoke with weight. And it spoke. Not in words. Not in sound. It spoke into us. A pressure in the skull. A static behind the eyes. Images. Fear. Hunger. Endless, endless hunger. James screamed and dropped his knife. Charles backed away, muttering something I couldn't hear. I stepped forward. I don't know why. Maybe I'd already accepted it. Maybe I thought I could fight it. I raised the crowbar and swung. It passed through the shape like mist, and the tunnel shook. The pit cracked. A noise like a dying engine screeched through the cavern. The ground lurched, and we fell back, scrambling. Run! Charles shouted. We turned and bolted. Behind us, the shape howled. Not a scream. Not a roar. Something deeper. Something that made the walls sweat and the lights fail. The tunnel began to collapse. Rock fell. Dust clouded the air. My lungs burned. We didn't stop. We hit the fork. Turned. Ran. The incline came into view like the finish line in a nightmare. James was first. Then Charles. Then me. We burst into daylight just as the tunnel behind us caved in entirely. A geyser of dust shot out of the mine entrance, followed by a noise like the world trying to cough up something it had swallowed too long ago. Then silence. Total, deafening silence. We sat in the dirt, coughing, bleeding, shaking. The mine entrance had collapsed completely. Nothing but rubble now. Gone. We didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, James stood up, brushing dust off his shirt. "That's it," he said. "We're done." Charles didn't say anything. He just nodded, staring at the rubble. We drove home in silence. It's been 6 months. James moved to Oregon. He deleted all his social media, changed his number, started fresh. Last I heard, he's doing well. No dreams. No dirt. No symbols. Charles disappeared. His apartment was empty when I checked. No sign of struggle. Just gone. Like he never lived there. Sometimes I wonder if he went back. Me? I still live in Nevada. The dream stopped, for a while. Then last week, I found something under my bed. A stone. Black. Smooth. Cold. Etched with a single symbol. A circle. 4 lines. Intersecting. Twisted. Wrong. And last night, I woke up to the sound of dragging. Coming from underneath the floorboards. I don't think it's over. Some things don't want to be forgotten. Some things don't let go.